Welcome friends to another 40k video. I just put down Dark Imperium by Guy Haley. In the last chapter, Roboute, in conversation with a man of faith from the current Imperium, comes up with some interesting thoughts. Roboute sees some of his father in himself. Does Roboute see some of his sons as tools like the Emperor sees him? And does he have some insight into the lies that the Emperor has told throughout his reign, just as Roboute may have to do from time to time? Let's get straight into it. Roboute starts talking to the man about the traitor legions and says part of why they fell is that words from a beloved leader can twist a man's heart, and Roboute says if the Emperor had not lied about the warp and kept others in ignorance, he wonders if things would have been different. Then the book says he remembered the throne room and the light, and that vast, inhuman soul touching his. He says the Emperor miscalculated with Horus, and that the Emperor was a man, an exceptional man, but a man nonetheless. As a man he made mistakes, as a man he had his flaws. Discussing the Emperor more, he says that he was a father to Roboute, and inwardly thinks, a distant, uncaring, heartless, manipulative father. And this had of course been coloured by his meeting with the Emperor, where he felt coldness. Roboute had had questions before he had met again with the Emperor. What condition would his father be in? And Guilliman expected little, but when his father spoke, it lacked the living Emperor's subtlety. Roboute knew he was as skilled at hiding his thoughts as he was at reading those of others, and Roboute feels something different about the Emperor this time. To me, it's like he was always in there somewhere, what Roboute sees, but would present himself to all others as what was needed to get them to do what fit into his plan, his great work. But that outer layer of humanity, perhaps we can call it, has been stripped away here to the raw, driven being inside. And it's just to say that there is not some love there, in my opinion, even if there was also a little manipulation in it. If you think that love and manipulation can both run parallel with each other. And remember also, the Master of Mankind is psychic, incredibly powerful is psychic. And so seeing everyone, the good and the bad in all people, must have had some impact on his thinking. Everyone is laid bare to him. What part of that made him conceal so much? And what part of that made him love mankind enough to do so much to try and help them as he sees it? The Emperor had let the Primarchs call themselves his sons, but he rarely used that term himself, Roboute realises. And when it was said without sincerity, and the cloak he showed had been ripped from Roboute's eyes. Roboute thinks the Emperor did not love them. They are weapons, and Roboute says the Emperor can no longer mask his thoughts with a human face. All his sons were just as a means to an end, very much echoing the Emperor's treatment of the Thunder Warriors, I think. Roboute, thinking on this more, rationalises. He does not love men, but he does love mankind, yet I find it hard to forgive him. Did his solution have to be built on lies? Lies upon lies. And just to go back to that sentence, he does not love men, but he does love mankind. After all, the Emperor's motivation to save mankind must come from somewhere, that drive, that effort to stay looking at the big picture, no matter how much that tramples on his relationships with those that he needs. He must have something like that to keep him going forward. And I think the love of mankind on a big macro scale, a big stepped back view of them, I think that's a very interesting motivation for Roboute to give the Emperor. Then later, facing off against a creature from the warp, Roboute thinks he understands what his father wanted to achieve, and knowing what mankind faced, Roboute sees why lies might be used. Could Guilliman honestly say he loved all the men who called themselves his sons? He barely knew them, especially now, with Cole's hordes in particular. They too were a means to an end. He and his father had that in common. The mantle of rulership was weighty and moulded the men that bore it. I never wanted to be a tyrant, thought the Primarch. Perhaps my father did not wish to be so either. History has roles for us that cannot be denied. We are but pieces on the board of eternity. And then, at the end of the conversation, Matthew asks Roboute if the Emperor loves his people, and the Primarch thinks there is too much of the Master of Mankind in the Primarchs themselves. He is their father in that way. And Roboute joins the lies his father used and says to this man of faith, Matthew, the Emperor loves us all. And that's where I will end today's video. I love the criticism and self-analysis here of Roboute, and I'm very intrigued by a lot of his understanding of the Emperor from his perspective. Now, he does not like what the Emperor does, but understands it because he himself has had to go through some of those same things and make some of those similar choices. So now, friends, I turn things over to you. Have you got your own thoughts on the Emperor? What his personality is, what his drive is? Let's talk about it. Drop me a comment down below.